When I came home from visiting my husband's grave on our 45th wedding anniversary, I found my clothes scattered across the front lawn like garbage. My daughter-in-law, Jennifer, stood on my porch, with her arms crossed and a smile that could freeze hell over. "You don't live here anymore, Margaret," she said, each word dropping like stones into my chest. "Consider this your eviction notice." The words hit me like a slap across the face with ice-cold water. I'm Margaret Chen. I'm 68 years old, and I'm about to tell you how I spent $247,000 over 8 years trying to buy my son's love, only to learn that some people see kindness as weakness and generosity as stupidity. Let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. 8 years ago, my husband Robert died of a sudden heart attack. We'd been married 37 years. The house felt like a mausoleum, and my son David was my lifeline. When he called 2 months after the funeral asking if he and his new wife Jennifer could move in just temporarily while they saved for a house, I didn't hesitate. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, my voice still raw from crying. "This house is too big for just me anyway." That temporary arrangement lasted 6 months before they bought their own place, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial that I helped them purchase with a $45,000 down payment. I told myself it was an investment in their future, in my future grandchildren. Jennifer hugged me and called me the best mother-in-law in the world. I should have seen the price tag attached to that compliment. The request started small. A $200 loan for groceries that was never repaid. A $500 emergency for Jennifer's car repair. Then David called about wanting to start a business, a craft brewery he'd been dreaming about for years. "Mum, this is my shot," he said. And I could hear Robert's voice in his enthusiasm. "I just need $30,000 to get started. I'll pay you back with interest, I promise." I withdrew the money from Robert's life insurance. I told myself Robert would have wanted this for David. I told myself a lot of things back then. The brewery never opened. David said the business climate wasn't right. The money evaporated like morning dew. But the real pattern started with Jennifer's shopping habits. Every month, like clockwork, she'd call with a crisis. "Margaret, I'm so embarrassed to ask, but David's paycheck got delayed, and our mortgage is due. Could you lend us $2,800, just this once?" That "just this once" happened 17 times. I have the bank statements. 17 months in a row, I paid their $2,800 mortgage. That's $47,600, in case you're calculating along with me. Then there were the credit card bailouts. Jennifer had expensive taste. Designer handbags, spa weekends, dinners at restaurants where entrees cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. "These are investments in my networking," she'd explain, flashing a smile as bright and fake as cubic zirconia. "I need to look successful to be successful." 3 times I paid off her credit cards. $8,400 in January, $11,200 in June, $9,800 in November. That's $29,400 of designer networking. I lived on $1,847 a month from Social Security and Robert's modest pension. I budgeted every dollar. I bought generic brands, cut coupons, wore the same winter coat for 5 years. Meanwhile, Jennifer posted Instagram photos with $600 shoes. The turning point, or what I thought was the turning point, came at David's 40th birthday party. They didn't invite me. I found out from my neighbor Carol, who saw the photos on Facebook. 30 people in my son's backyard, including Jennifer's parents, celebrating the baby I'd raised alone while Robert worked double shifts. When I called David the next day, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone, he sighed like I was a telemarketer. Mom, it was just a small thing. Jennifer thought you'd be tired. You know how you get. How I get? You know, your moods. Jennifer thinks you might be depressed. Maybe you should see someone. That was the first time Jennifer planted the seed that I was mentally unstable. It wouldn't be the last. 2 months later, I got bronchitis. I was in bed for a week, fever climbing to 103. I called David to ask if he could pick up my prescriptions. Mom, I can't just drop everything. I have work. Can't you order them online? I was too weak to argue. Carol ended up taking me to urgent care. But 3 weeks later, when Jennifer needed someone to watch their dog for a weekend while they went to Napa Valley, a $3,000 trip I later learned I'd unknowingly financed through their emergency mortgage payment, David expected me to jump. Come on, Mom. You love Bentley. It's just 2 days. I'm allergic to dogs. I've been allergic to dogs since David was a child. He knew this. I said yes anyway. I spent the weekend wheezing, taking Benadryl every 4 hours, because saying no to David felt like betraying Robert's memory. The breaking point came last year at Christmas. I'd been saving all year, literally putting aside $20 a week from my grocery budget to buy gifts for David and Jennifer. I got David a vintage brewing book I'd found at an estate sale, something related to the dream he'd abandoned. For Jennifer, I bought a $200 cashmere scarf I'd found on sale. Christmas morning, I arrived at their house with my gifts wrapped carefully in paper I'd saved from the previous year. Jennifer opened her door wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Oh, Margaret, you're early. We weren't expecting you until noon. It was 10 a.m. We'd agreed on 10 a.m. I had the text message. We're actually still opening gifts with Jennifer's parents. They stayed overnight. Why don't you come back in a few hours? I stood on that porch for 15 seconds that felt like 15 years. Through the window, I could see Jennifer's mother laughing, holding a glass of champagne. I could see my son sitting by a Christmas tree I'd never seen before. Of course, I heard myself say. I'll come back later. I went home. I didn't go back. David called at 4 p.m., irritated. Mom, where are you? We're about to do dinner. I'm not feeling well, I said, which wasn't a lie. My chest ached, like someone was sitting on it. Well, this is typical. Jennifer went to all this trouble, and you can't even show up. They opened my gifts without me. I never got a thank you. After the holidays, Jennifer called with a new emergency. Their furnace had broken. They needed $6,500 immediately, or they'd freeze. I'd spent January eating oatmeal and peanut butter sandwiches to recover from Christmas. My account was down to $847 until my February pension arrived. I don't have it right now, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence on the other end was arctic. I see, Jennifer said finally. So when you needed help, we were there. But now that we need you, you're suddenly broke. That's interesting, Margaret. That's really interesting. Jennifer, I've given you over. We have to go. David's very disappointed in you. She hung up. For 3 weeks, they didn't call, didn't text. When I called David, it went to voicemail. Then one Saturday morning, David showed up at my door with Jennifer, and a smile that made my stomach drop. Mom, we need to talk about your future, he said, walking past me into my living room like he owned it. Jennifer sat on my couch, the couch Robert and I had picked out 30 years ago, and folded her hands like a concerned therapist. Margaret, we're worried about you. You're forgetting things, you're isolating yourself, you're not taking care of this house. David and I have been discussing it, and we think it's time to consider options. Options? Assisted living, David said, not meeting my eyes. Somewhere with support, meals provided, medical care on site. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm 68 years old. I'm not dying. I don't need assisted living. See, this is what we mean, Jennifer said gently, with the kind of gentle that feels like a knife wrapped in silk. You're getting defensive instead of seeing we're trying to help. These are signs, Margaret. Signs of what? Cognitive decline, she said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. That's when David dropped the bomb. Mum, we think you should sell this house. It's too much for you. The money could pay for a really nice facility, and whatever's left over could be set aside for your care. The room tilted. This is my home. Robert and I built this life here. Dad's gone, Mum. David's voice was sharp now, the gentleness evaporating. You're holding on to the past. It's not healthy. They'd rehearsed this. I could tell from the way they traded off speaking, like a tag team of concerned vultures. I want you to leave, I said quietly. Mom, get out of my house. Jennifer stood, shaking her head sadly. You see, David, I told you she wasn't ready to hear this. Margaret, we're just trying to help. When you're ready to have an adult conversation about your limitations, call us. They left. I sat on that 30-year-old couch and cried until I couldn't breathe. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 2 a.m. and did something I'd never done before. I added everything up. Down payment on their house, $45,000. Business loan, $30,000. Mortgage payments, 17 months, times $2,800. $47,600 credit card bailouts, $29,400 car repairs, $12,300 emergency loans never repaid, $18,200 furniture, $8,500 vacations, $11,400 Jennifer's networking dinners, $6,900 miscellaneous, can you just, $37,700, total $247,000, over 8 years. That was more than Robert's entire life insurance policy. That was my retirement. That was the trips Robert and I had planned to take. That was the security we'd built over 37 years of marriage, handed over piece by piece because I thought that's what mothers were supposed to do. I printed out every bank statement. I highlighted every transaction. I made a spreadsheet that would make an accountant weep. And then I made a phone call that changed everything. Hello, law offices of Patricia Morrison. How can I help you? My voice shook, but I got the words out. I need to speak to someone about financial elder abuse. Patricia Morrison's office smelled like leather and old books. The kind of smell that makes you feel like justice might actually exist. She was in her mid-50s, with silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun and eyes that had probably seen every flavor of human cruelty. She looked at my spreadsheet for a full 3 minutes without speaking. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Chen, how much of this money was given as gifts? And how much was supposedly loans? They always said loans. They always said they'd pay me back. Do you have anything in writing? My stomach sank. No, they're family. I didn't think... I know. Her voice was kind but firm. That's how it works. They count on that. Do you have text messages, emails, voicemails? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I'd never deleted anything. There were 247 text messages from Jennifer asking for money. Every single one started with, I hate to ask, or I'm so embarrassed, or just this once. Patricia's expression hardened as she scrolled. Mrs. Chen, what I'm seeing here is a textbook case of financial exploitation. Your son and daughter-in-law have systematically drained your retirement assets while isolating you emotionally. The fact that they're now suggesting you sell your home and move into assisted living? That's the end game. End game? Once you're in a facility, they'd likely pursue guardianship, power of attorney, control of your assets. You'd be signing over everything, and you wouldn't even realize it until it was too late. The room spun. My son wouldn't. Mrs. Chen. Patricia leaned forward. I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear it. Your son may have started out as a victim of his wife's manipulation, but right now, today, he is actively participating in financially abusing you. Whether he admits that to himself or not doesn't change the reality. I cried then. Not gentle tears, but the ugly, gasping kind that come from somewhere deep in your chest, where you've been holding truth you didn't want to see. Patricia handed me tissues and waited. What do? I finally asked. First, we protect your assets. Today, right now. Then we establish boundaries with legal teeth. And Mrs. Chen, you stop giving them money. Not $1, not ever again. The bank was my next stop. I'd been using the same branch for 30 years, and the manager, Tom Rodriguez, knew me by name. Mrs. Chen, good to see you. What can I help with today? I need to make some changes to my accounts. I need to make sure no one but me can access them. Tom's professional smile faltered. Is everything okay? I took a breath. No, everything is not okay. But it's about to be. We spent an hour securing everything. New account numbers, new passwords, fraud alerts. Tom even suggested I get a new debit card with a different design so the old one would be immediately recognizable if someone tried to use it. I'm also removing David Chen as my emergency contact and beneficiary, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Tom paused. Your son? Yes. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded and made it happen. When I left that bank, I felt like I'd grown 2 inches taller. Next was the locksmith. By 4 p.m. that same day, every lock on my house had been changed. The locksmith, a young woman named Tasha, noticed my hands shaking as I handed her the check. Everything okay, ma'am? I'm changing my locks so my son can't get in. She didn't even blink. Good for you. I did the same thing with my mother last year. Family doesn't give you the right to walk all over someone. That casual validation from a stranger who owed me nothing cracked something open in my chest. Was it hard? I asked. Standing up to your mum? Hardest thing I ever did. But you know what was harder? The 10 years before that, when I let her treat me like garbage. She finished installing the last lock and handed me a new set of keys. These are yours, nobody else's. You don't owe anyone access to your life. David called that evening. I stared at his name on my phone screen for 4 rings before I answered. Mum, where were you today? Jennifer tried to stop by and your car was gone. I had appointments. What kind of appointments? Are you okay? See, this is what we're talking about. You're running around doing who knows what. I went to see a lawyer. Silence. Then, a lawyer? Why would you need a lawyer? To discuss the $247,000 you and Jennifer have taken from me over the past 8 years? The silence that followed was so complete I checked to see if the call had dropped. Mum. His voice was different now. Careful. That's not fair. We never took anything. You gave it to us. You wanted to help. You said loans. You said you'd pay me back. We will. We're just going through a tough time right now. Jesus, Mum, are you really going to hold it over our heads? After everything we've done for you? What have you done for me, David? Specifically. Another pause. We visit. We include you in our lives. We care about your well-being. You excluded me from your birthday party. You sent me away on Christmas. You ignore my calls unless you need money. And now you want me to sell my home so you can, what? Control whatever's left. That's not, you're twisting everything. Jennifer said you'd do this. She said you'd make yourself the victim. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the way he said victim, like it was a dirty word. Maybe it was 8 years of swallowing my dignity finally coming back up. David Robert Chen, you listen to me. I am your mother. I held you when you had nightmares. I worked overtime at the hospital for 15 years to pay for your college. Your father and I sacrificed everything to give you a good life. And I would have given you anything, if you just loved me back. My voice cracked, but I kept going. But you don't love me. You love my bank account. So here's what's going to happen. You and Jennifer are not getting another cent. Not now, not ever. My accounts are locked. My house is locked. And if you come near me demanding money or trying to force me into a home, I will pursue legal action for financial elder abuse. My lawyer has all the documentation. Mom, you're being crazy. Don't. Don't you dare call me crazy. That's her playbook, David, and you're too smart to not see it. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're exactly as smart as you seem right now. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I had to sit down. But underneath the shaking was something else. Something that felt almost like power. Jennifer called 30 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. Margaret, it's Jennifer. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're really hurting David right now. He's devastated. He's in tears. His own mother is accusing him of terrible things, treating him like a criminal, when all he's ever done is love you. I think you need to seriously consider that maybe your judgment isn't what it used to be. Maybe those cognitive issues are worse than we thought. Call us back when you're ready to apologize and have a rational conversation. I saved the voicemail. Patricia had told me to save everything. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I went through the photo albums Robert and I had kept. Pictures of David as a baby, David's first day of school, David graduating high school, David's wedding, where he'd looked at Jennifer like she hung the moon. I tried to find the exact moment he'd changed. But the truth was, people don't change in moments. They change in 1,000 small compromises, 1,000 tiny choices, where they pick comfort over courage, convenience over character. Maybe David had always been this person, and I'd just been too in love with who I wanted him to be to see who he actually was. The next morning, I went to visit Robert's grave. I'd been going every week for 8 years, always on Saturday mornings. I brought fresh flowers, carnations, because roses were too expensive now that I'd stopped funding Jennifer's lifestyle. Robert, I said to the headstone, I think I messed up. I think I spent 8 years trying to keep David close by buying him, and all I did was teach him I was a wallet with feelings. And now I don't know if I lost a son or if I never really had one to begin with. A woman's voice behind me said, "The second one. You never really had one to begin with." I turned. She was about my age, maybe a few years younger, with kind eyes and a bouquet of daisies. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to intrude, but I've been visiting my husband's grave here for 6 years, and I've seen you almost every week. And today you just look like someone who needed to hear the truth. You don't even know what happened." "Don't I?" She smiled sadly. "Let me guess. Adult child, constant financial emergencies. You gave and gave until there was nothing left. And now that you've finally said no, you're the villain in the story." I stared at her. "How did you—" "Because I lived it. My daughter and her husband took $180,000 from me over 7 years. When I finally cut them off, She tried to have me declared incompetent, took me to court, brought a psychiatrist who'd never even met me, claimed I was having delusions. My blood ran cold. What happened? I won. But it took 6 months and $30,000 in legal fees. And I haven't spoken to my daughter in 4 years. She paused. But I'd do it again, because the alternative was spending the rest of my life as an ATM machine, dying broke and alone anyway, just with the illusion that I was buying love. Does it get easier? Eventually. Once you stop mourning who you wanted them to be and accept who they actually are. She held out her hand. I'm Susan. Margaret. Margaret, do you have a good lawyer? I think so. Good. Because they're going to escalate, and you need to be ready. Susan was right. 3 days later, David and Jennifer showed up at my door. I watched through the window as David tried his old key. When it didn't work, his face went through a journey. Confusion, understanding, rage. Jennifer pounded on the door. Margaret, open this door right now. We need to talk. I called out through the closed door. You're not welcome here. Please leave. Mom, come on. David's voice cracked. Don't be ridiculous. Just open the door so we can talk like adults. Any communication can go through my lawyer, Patricia Morrison. Her number is on the card I mailed you. We didn't come here to talk to a goddamn lawyer, Jennifer screamed. And there it was, the mask slipping. You owe us, you selfish bitch. After everything we've done, after all the time we wasted on you. Jennifer, stop, David said, but he didn't sound like he meant it. No, she needs to hear this. We have bills because of her. We made decisions based on her promises. She doesn't get to just cut us off because she's having some kind of mental breakdown. I stood on the other side of my door, holding my phone, recording every word. I'm calling the police if you don't leave, I said. Call them, Jennifer shouted. Tell them how you're abandoning your family. Tell them how you're so paranoid you changed your locks against your own son. I dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? My son and daughter-in-law are on my property, refusing to leave after I've asked them to go. I feel threatened. The operator's voice was calm and professional. Are they trying to break in? Not yet. But they're screaming and pounding on my door. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and stay on the line with me. Through the window, I saw David grab Jennifer's arm. The cops are coming. We need to go. This isn't over, Margaret, Jennifer shouted as they walked to their car. You're going to regret this. You're going to end up alone in some state facility, and we won't be there to save you. The police arrived 4 minutes later. I showed them the recording. I showed them the texts. I explained the situation calmly, my voice steady, because I'd practiced this with Patricia. The older officer, a woman with grey in her hair and compassion in her eyes, looked at me for a long moment. Ma'am, I'm going to be straight with you. What you're describing is financial exploitation, and it often escalates when the victim cuts off access. I recommend you file for a restraining order, and I'm going to make a report documenting today's incident. If they come back, call us immediately. She should file a restraining order against her own son? The younger officer asked, incredulous. The older officer's voice was steel. The worst abuse I've seen in 20 years on this job has been family members. Blood doesn't give you the right to terrorize someone. After they left, I sat in my living room and cried. But this time, it wasn't the helpless crying of before. It was the crying that comes when you realize you're stronger than you knew, and the price of that strength is higher than you wanted to pay. That night, the text started. From David, Mum, please, We can work this out. Don't let a lawyer turn you against your own family. From Jennifer, you're going to die alone, Margaret. No one will come to your funeral. Hope that lawyer can hold your hand when you're dying. From a number I didn't recognize. Elder abuse goes both ways. Cutting off your family is abandonment. From Jennifer's mother, I always knew you were a selfish woman. Now David sees it too. I forwarded every single message to Patricia. Then I blocked every number. Then I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I called my old friend Linda from the hospital where I used to work. Margaret, oh my God, it's been forever. I know, I'm sorry. I let some things get away from me. Are you okay? And for the first time in 8 years, I answered honestly. No, but I'm going to be. We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything. And Linda, wonderful Linda, didn't judge or give advice. She just listened and then said, come to dinner next week. Just us girls. Marsha and Tanya still ask about you. We've missed you. I'd isolated myself. I realized it then. I'd cut off my friends, my life, my interests, all to be available whenever David and Jennifer needed something. I'd made myself small so they could feel big. That was ending now. The next morning, I did something else I hadn't done in years. I went to the salon, not the cheap walk-in place where I'd been getting $15 haircuts. The real salon, where a cut and colour cost $150. What are we doing today? The stylist asked. I looked at myself in the mirror. A tired, grey-haired woman who'd forgotten what joy looked like. Something different, I said. Something that looks like the beginning of something new. 2 hours later, I walked out with styled silver hair that looked intentional instead of defeated, and nails painted a deep burgundy that Robert always said made me look sophisticated. I felt almost pretty. I felt almost like myself. That afternoon, Patricia called. Margaret, I need to prepare you for something. Based on the messages you've forwarded and the police report, I believe your son and daughter-in-law are going to make a legal move, probably within the next few weeks. My stomach dropped. What kind of move? Guardianship petition. Conservatorship. They'll try to prove you're mentally incompetent to manage your affairs. They'll bring witnesses, maybe a doctor they've consulted. It's going to be ugly. How do we fight it? We get ahead of it. I'm scheduling you for a full cognitive evaluation with Dr. Sarah Patel. She's a geriatric psychiatrist, the best in the state. She'll conduct a comprehensive assessment, and her report will be our shield. We'll also get a statement from your primary care physician. Do you have any health issues they could twist? I have high blood pressure, controlled with medication. That's it. Good. We're going to build a wall of documentation that proves you are of sound mind, capable of making your own decisions, and the victim of financial exploitation, not the perpetrator of it. Patricia, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I'm a bad mother? The pause lasted 3 heartbeats. Margaret, I think you're a mother who loved too much and trusted too easily. That's not a crime. That's not even a flaw. It's just expensive. Dr. Patel's evaluation took 3 hours. She asked me about my childhood, my marriage, my son. She gave me memory tests, problem-solving puzzles, asked me to count backwards by 7s from 100. Mrs. Chen, she said finally, you're cognitively sharp. Your memory is above average for your age. You show no signs of dementia, delusion, or any impairment that would prevent you from managing your affairs. What you do show signs of is complex grief and situational stress, which is completely understandable given what you've been through. So I'm not crazy. She smiled gently. You're not crazy. You're hurting. There's a difference. I cried in her office. She handed me tissues and didn't rush me. What happens now? I asked. Now you heal. You set boundaries. You build a life that isn't centered on purchasing approval from people who've proven they're not worthy of you. And if anyone challenges your competency in court, I will testify that you are one of the sanest, strongest women I've met. That night, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and started typing. Dear David, I carried you for 9 months. I was in labor for 23 hours. I breastfed you until you were 18 months old. I read you bedtime stories until you were 12 and insisted you were too old. I taught you to ride a bike, to tie your tie for prom, to drive a stick shift. I sat up with you through nightmares and heartbreaks and disappointments. Your father worked himself to exhaustion to give you opportunities we never had. He died having barely retired, having barely enjoyed the life we'd built. Because providing for you was what mattered most. I would have given you anything. All you had to do was love me back. But you didn't. You saw a resource. An ATM with feelings. A bank that dispensed money when you pushed the right emotional buttons. $247,000. I calculated it. That's what it cost me to learn that I cannot purchase your affection, and you cannot sell what you never had to give. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sad. Sad for the son I thought I had, who maybe never existed, except in my imagination. Sad for the relationship we might have had, if you'd valued me as much as you valued my money. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to apologize. Make actual amends, and treat me like a human being instead of an inheritance. Your mother, Margaret, I didn't send it. I saved it in a folder. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday I wouldn't need to. The court papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked apologetic as he handed me the envelope. Petition for emergency guardianship and conservatorship. Petitioners, David Chen and Jennifer Chen. Respondent, Margaret Chen. My hands shook as I read the allegations. Respondent exhibits severe cognitive decline and is unable to manage her financial affairs or make sound decisions regarding her welfare. Respondent has become paranoid, accusing family members of theft without basis. Respondent has isolated herself from family and exhibits erratic behavior, including changing locks to keep out concerned relatives. Respondent requires immediate intervention to prevent self-harm and financial exploitation by unknown third parties. They'd twisted everything. Every act of self-protection I'd taken, they'd reframed as evidence of incompetence. I called Patricia immediately. I've been expecting this, she said, her voice calm in a way that steadied me. Margaret, listen to me. This is textbook Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. They're claiming you're the danger to yourself when they're the actual threat. We're ready for this. When's the hearing? 2 weeks. They filed for emergency status, which means the judge will hear it quickly. We need to move fast. Patricia transformed into a warrior over the next 14 days. She subpoenaed my bank records showing every transaction. She got statements from my primary care physician, Dr. Yao, who'd been treating me for 15 years. She prepped Dr. Patel to testify. She even tracked down Carol, my neighbor, who'd witnessed years of David and Jennifer's behavior. But Patricia's masterstroke was finding other victims. Margaret, I've been researching Jennifer. Before she married your son, she was married to someone else. And that's someone else's mother. She has a very similar story to yours. Patricia handed me a name. Dorothy Martinez. We met at a coffee shop. Dorothy was 72, with steel grey hair and eyes that had seen too much. When I told her my story, she actually laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the kind that comes when something is so familiar, it's almost funny. $380,000, Dorothy said. That's what Jennifer and her first husband took from me over 6 years. House down payment, car, wedding. The wedding alone was $45,000, and they divorced 18 months later. How did you get away? I didn't. They bled me dry, then moved on to the next target. She looked at me with something like admiration. You stopped it. You're fighting back. I wish I'd had your strength. Will you testify? Dorothy's hand trembled as she lifted her coffee cup. If it means stopping her from doing this to someone else, absolutely. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Oak paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that looked like it had witnessed 1,000 family tragedies. Judge Rachel Morrison, no relation to my lawyer, though Patricia joked it was a good omen, was in her early 60s, with reading glasses on a chain, and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie ever told. David and Jennifer sat at the petitioner's table with their lawyer, a slick man in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. David wouldn't look at me. Jennifer stared with barely concealed rage. We'll begin with the petitioner's case, Judge Morrison said. Counselor? Their lawyer, Mr. Harrington, stood. Your Honor, this is a heartbreaking case of a beloved mother descending into paranoia and cognitive decline, refusing help from the family who loves her. We have compelling evidence. I'll determine what's compelling, Counselor. Proceed. Their first witness was Jennifer. She took the stand wearing a conservative navy dress and pearls, the picture of concerned respectability. Her voice was soft, wounded. I love Margaret like she's my own mother, Jennifer began, and I watched her dab at her eyes with a tissue. For 8 years, David and I have tried to include her in our lives, to support her after Robert's death. But over the past year, she's changed. She's become suspicious, accusatory. She claims we've stolen from her when we've only accepted the gifts she insisted on giving. Can you provide examples of this behavior? Harrington asked. She changed all her locks without telling us. She accused us of trying to steal her house. She won't answer our calls. She's isolated herself from everyone who cares about her. We tried to suggest she might need additional support, maybe assisted living where she'd have community and medical care, and she threatened us with lawyers and restraining orders. Have you noticed memory issues? Oh, yes. She forgets conversations. She'll tell me the same story multiple times. Last Christmas, we invited her at 10 a.m., and she insisted we'd said noon. She showed up early, got upset, and left. Then she claimed we'd excluded her. I watched the judge's face. She was taking notes, her expression neutral. Patricia stood for cross-examination. She moved like a shark, scenting blood. Ms. Chen, you testified that Margaret gave you gifts over the years. Can you quantify those gifts? Jennifer blinked. I don't know exactly. Maybe $30,000 total? You're under oath, Ms. Chen. Are you sure it was $30,000? Approximately, yes. Patricia pulled out a document. Your Honor, this is a complete accounting of all transfers from Margaret Chen's accounts to David and Jennifer Chen over 8 years. The total is $247,000. Miss Chen, were you lying just now, or do you genuinely not remember receiving over $200,000 from your mother-in-law? Jennifer's face flushed. We didn't ask for all that. She insisted. I'm not asking what she insisted. I'm asking if you remember receiving it. Some of it was loans. We plan to pay it back. Show me the loan agreements. Show me a single document where you agreed to terms of repayment. Silence. Miss Chen, can you explain these text messages? Patricia displayed them on a screen. Message after message from Jennifer. Emergency. Need $2,800 for mortgage. Car broke down. Need $1,200 today. My credit card got declined. So embarrassing. Can you transfer $5,000? These are 247 separate requests for money over 8 years. Does this seem like gift giving to you? Or does this seem like systematic exploitation? Objection! Harrington jumped up. Argumentative. Sustained. Rephrase, counselor. Patricia smiled. Ms. Chen, you mentioned Margaret's memory issues, specifically about Christmas. You said you invited her for 10 a.m. and she thought it was noon? Yes. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence Margaret's phone records showing a text from Jennifer Chen dated December 23rd. Patricia projected it on screen. Looking forward to seeing you Christmas morning at 10. Can't wait. Jennifer's mouth opened and closed. So Margaret remembered correctly, didn't she? You told her 10 a.m. And when she arrived at 10 a.m. as instructed, you turned her away because Jennifer's parents were there. Isn't that the truth? She was early. The text might have said, I don't remember exactly. But you want this court to believe Margaret is the one with memory problems? And you testified you love Margaret like a mother. How many times did you visit her when she wasn't giving you money? Jennifer stared. The court record shows Margaret had bronchitis severe enough to require hospitalization in March 2025. Did you visit her in the hospital? David was working. That's not what I asked. Did you visit? Did you call? Did you send flowers? I don't remember. Margaret's phone records show no calls from you during her entire hospital stay. Medical records show her emergency contact, Carol Winters, was the one who took her to urgent care because when Margaret called David, he said he was too busy. Does that sound like a family who loves her like a mother? Harrington objected 3 more times. Judge Morrison overruled him each time, her expression growing colder. When Jennifer finally stepped down, she looked like she'd aged 10 years. David took the stand next. He looked miserable, his tie slightly crooked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Chen, Harrington said gently, tell the court about your concerns for your mother. She's not herself anymore. She's angry all the time. She won't talk to us. We just want to help her. Make sure she's safe and cared for. My dad would have wanted... His voice broke. I felt a stab of pain in my chest. That was my baby up there, the boy I'd raised, and some part of me still wanted to comfort him. Then Patricia stood for cross-examination, and that feeling evaporated. Mr. Chen, how much money have you borrowed from your mother over the past 8 years? I don't know the exact amount. Mum was always generous. Let me help you. The exact amount is $247,000. Does that surprise you? David shifted in his seat. That can't be right. Bank records don't lie, Mr. Chen. How much of that have you repaid? We've been meaning to. Things have been tight. How much, Mr. Chen? Give me a number. 0, he whispered. I'm sorry, the court reporter needs to hear you. 0. We haven't repaid any of it yet. Yet. Interesting word choice. Mr. Chen, you and your wife earn a combined income of approximately $180,000 per year, correct? Around that. And your mother lives on $1,847 per month from Social Security and pension. That's $22,164 per year. You make 8 times what she makes. And yet she gave you $247,000. Does that seem reasonable to you? She wanted to help. Did she? Or did you and your wife systematically exploit an elderly widow's grief and desire to stay connected to her only child? Objection. Withdrawn. Mr. Chen, when was the last time you visited your mother when you weren't asking for money? David's face crumpled. I visit all the time. Bank records show a clear pattern. Within 48 hours of every significant monetary transfer from your mother, there's a corresponding text or phone call from you or your wife. But there are months-long gaps when no money changed hands. During those gaps, how often did you contact your mother? I don't know. Your mother had bronchitis. She called you for help. What did you tell her? I was at work. What did you tell her, Mr. Chen? I said I couldn't help. I had meetings. But 3 weeks later, when she didn't immediately have $6,500 for your furnace repair, how long did you wait before you cut off contact? That's not fair. How long? I don't know. Maybe we didn't call for a few weeks. 3 weeks. You punished your elderly mother by withdrawing contact for 3 weeks because she couldn't immediately produce money. Does that sound like love to you, Mr. Chen? David was crying now. Real tears. But I couldn't tell if they were for me, for himself, or just for getting caught. Mr. Chen, one more question. When you and your wife suggested your mother sell her home and move into assisted living, where did you plan for the proceeds from that sale to go? To pay for her care? All of it? $400,000? For a facility that costs maybe $4,000 a month? That's over 8 years of care paid in advance. What would happen to the remaining $350,000 or so? Silence. Were you planning to manage it for her, as her guardian, with full access to her accounts? We just wanted what was best for her, or what was best for you. I love my mother. David's voice broke on the last word, and I saw the judge's expression shift, not to sympathy, but to something sadder. Recognition, maybe, of how often love and exploitation get tangled together until even the perpetrator can't tell them apart. The defense's surprise witness was a Dr. Martin Greer, a psychologist who Jennifer's lawyer introduced as having consulted on Margaret's case. Dr. Greer, in your professional opinion, does Margaret Chen show signs of cognitive impairment? Based on my consultation with the family and review of her recent behavior, I believe she's experiencing paranoid delusions, likely early-stage dementia. The sudden distrust of family, the accusatory behavior, the social isolation, these are classic markers. And would she benefit from professional care? Absolutely. She needs supervised living and possibly medication. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, may I voir dire this witness? Judge Morrison nodded. Dr. Greer, when did you last see Margaret Chen in person? I haven't met her personally, but based on family reports, you've never met her. Family consultations are a valid diagnostic tool. Have you reviewed any of Margaret Chen's medical records? The family didn't provide. Have you spoken to her primary care physician, Dr. Yao, who's been treating her for 15 years? No, but Have you reviewed the cognitive assessment conducted by Dr. Sarah Patel, a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist? I wasn't aware of any assessment. So you're offering an expert opinion on the mental state of a woman you've never met, whose medical records you haven't reviewed? Based solely on information provided by two people who stand to gain financially from having her declared incompetent. Is that an accurate summary? Dr. Greer's face reddened. I'm basing my opinion on behavioral patterns consistent with Your Honor. I move to strike this witness's entire testimony as lacking foundation and based on unreliable hearsay. Granted. The jury will disregard Dr. Greer's testimony. Dr. Greer, you're excused. Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen lava. Our witnesses painted a different picture. Dr. Yao testified, Margaret is one of my healthiest patients. Sharp mind, excellent memory, manages her medications independently. I've seen no cognitive decline whatsoever. Dr. Patel was devastating. Mrs. Chen scored in the 94th percentile for her age group on cognitive testing. Her memory, reasoning, and judgment are all intact. What she's experiencing is appropriate emotional distress from being financially exploited by family members. Honestly, if she weren't distressed by this situation, that would concern me more. Carol, my neighbour, spoke quietly but firmly. I've watched Jennifer and David circle Margaret like vultures for years. I've seen them show up only when they needed something. I've seen Margaret go without, wearing old clothes, skipping meals, while they drove new cars and took vacations. And when she finally said enough, they tried to paint her as crazy. It's disgusting. But the witness who changed everything was Dorothy Martinez. Dorothy walked to the stand, with her head high. She looked at Jennifer. And Jennifer actually flinched. Ms. Martinez, Patricia said, how do you know Jennifer Chen? She was my daughter-in-law for 3 years. She was married to my son, Michael, before she married David Chen. A murmur went through the courtroom. David's face went white. And what was your experience with Jennifer? The same as Margaret's. Constant financial emergencies, loans that were never repaid, pressure to give more and more. Over 6 years, Jennifer and Michael took $380,000 from me. When I finally couldn't give any more, they divorced, and I never heard from either of them again. Did Jennifer try to have you declared incompetent? No, I didn't have anything left to take by then. They'd already gotten it all. Patricia turned to Jennifer. Ms. Chen, did you fail to disclose to David that you had a previous marriage? Jennifer's lawyer jumped up. Objection, relevance. Your Honor, this goes to pattern and practice. This witness establishes that Ms. Chen has a history of systematically exploiting elderly mothers-in-law for financial gain. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Ms. Chen. Jennifer's voice was barely audible. David knew I was married before. Did he know you took $380,000 from your first mother-in-law using the exact same tactics you used on Margaret? I didn't. That's not what happened. Ms. Martinez, do you recognize these text messages? Patricia displayed them side by side. Messages from Jennifer to Dorothy. Messages from Jennifer to me. The wording was almost identical. Emergency! Just this once. I hate to ask. We'll pay you back. Your Honor, Patricia said, Jennifer Chen is a serial elder abuser. She has a documented pattern of marrying men, extracting everything she can from their mothers, and moving on. This isn't a concerned daughter-in-law trying to help. This is a con artist who got caught. The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Morrison looked at Jennifer for a long moment. Then she looked at David, whose head was in his hands. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," the judge said. "When we return, I'll hear closing arguments." During the recess, I saw David and Jennifer arguing in the hallway. I couldn't hear the words, but Jennifer's face was furious. David's devastated. He looked at me once across the crowded corridor, and I saw something in his eyes. Maybe recognition, maybe regret, maybe just the realization that he'd bet on the wrong horse. I looked away first. Harrington's closing argument was brief and desperate. "Your Honor, regardless of past issues, David Chen is trying to protect his mother. Perhaps he's been misguided. Perhaps his wife has complicated this situation. But his intentions come from love, and Margaret needs family oversight." Patricia stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your Honor, this case is simple. 2 people systematically exploited an elderly widow out of $247,000. When she finally found the strength to say no, they tried to take the rest by having her declared incompetent. Jennifer Chen has done this before. She'll do it again if we allow it. Margaret Chen is not the one who needs oversight. She's the one who needs protection from her own son and his predatory wife. I asked the court to deny this petition and grant Margaret a restraining order against both petitioners. Judge Morrison didn't even leave the bench to deliberate. "I've been a judge for 22 years, she said. "I've heard hundreds of guardianship cases. Most of them are heartbreaking in complicated ways. This one is heartbreaking in a very simple way." She looked at David and Jennifer. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, what you have done to this woman is unconscionable. You exploited her grief, her generosity, and her love for her son. When she finally set boundaries, you retaliated by trying to seize control of her remaining assets through the legal system. This court will not be an instrument of your abuse." She turned to me. "Mrs. Chen, you are clearly of sound mind and capable of managing your affairs. In fact, you have shown remarkable courage in defending yourself against people who should have been defending you. The petition for guardianship is denied." She looked back at David and Jennifer. "Furthermore, I'm granting Mrs. Chen's request for a restraining order. You are to stay at least 500 feet from her person and property. No contact whatsoever. If you violate this order, you will be arrested." The gavel came down like thunder. "This court is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, Patricia hugged me. "You did it, Margaret. We did it. No, you did it. You fought back when most people would have given up. You should be proud." I watched David and Jennifer leave through a side exit. Jennifer was on her phone, already moving to her next play. David walked like a man who'd lost everything, and maybe he had. But not because of me. Susan, who'd sat in the back of the courtroom for support, walked up and took my hand. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter," I said. And it was true. Like I'd been carrying 247,000 pounds on my shoulders and finally set it down. 6 months after the trial, I was sitting on my back porch. My porch, my house, my life. Drinking coffee and watching the sun rise over the garden Robert and I had planted 30 years ago. The roses needed pruning. I'd do it later. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd let them grow wild for once. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. "Still on for lunch? Marcia found this amazing Thai place." I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. That's what my life looked like now. Lunch with friends, book club on Thursdays, a watercolor class at the senior center where I was, hilariously, one of the younger members. I'd even started volunteering at the hospital, where I used to work, reading to patients who had no visitors. I knew what that felt like now, being alone. But I'd learned the difference between being alone and being lonely, and the difference between loneliness and peace. The restraining order held. David and Jennifer tried to contact me exactly once. Through a lawyer, 3 months after the trial, with a settlement offer. They'd pay me back $50,000 if I agreed to drop any potential criminal charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement about their alleged financial exploitation. I had Patricia send back a one-sentence response. Mrs. Chen declines and reminds you that any further contact violates the restraining order. I never heard from them again. I did hear about them, though. Carol, who couldn't resist a good piece of gossip, told me they'd put their house up for sale. Foreclosure, Carol said over coffee one morning, trying to look sympathetic and failing. Apparently they couldn't make the payments without your contributions. I felt a flicker of something, not quite satisfaction, not quite sadness. Maybe justice has its own emotion that we don't have a word for. And Margaret. Carol leaned in, lowering her voice. Dorothy called me. She said Jennifer and David are getting divorced. Jennifer's already been spotted with some other man, older, wealthy, same pattern starting all over again. I thought about warning him, this unknown man. But Patricia had advised against any contact that could be construed as harassment. Some people have to learn their own lessons, she'd said. I hoped he'd learn faster than I did. I hoped his mother, if he had one, was stronger than I'd been. The money was gone. All $247,000. I'd accepted that, but I'd done the math, carefully, with a financial advisor Patricia recommended. I had my house, paid off. I had my Social Security and pension. If I was careful, and I'd gotten very good at being careful, I'd be fine. Not rich, not comfortable, but fine. And fine, I'd discovered, was actually pretty good when you weren't bleeding money to people who didn't love you. One afternoon in early fall, I did something I'd been avoiding for 6 months. I went through the boxes in my attic. The ones full of David's childhood things. Report cards, art projects, photos of birthday parties and Christmas mornings. The Mother's Day cards he'd made in elementary school with shaky handwriting. Mom, you're the best. I love you. Infinity. I cried. Of course I cried. Because this is the thing they don't tell you about setting boundaries with your children. You're not just grieving who they became. You're grieving who they were and who you thought they'd always be. That little boy with the gap-toothed smile who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers. He was real. He'd existed. He'd loved me the way children love, unconditionally and completely. But he'd grown up. And somewhere along the way, maybe in small moments I'd missed, maybe in ways I'd accidentally encouraged, he'd learned that love could be transactional, that mothers were resources, that need was the same thing as affection. I couldn't pinpoint when or how. Maybe there was no single moment. Maybe it was 1,000 tiny erosions, like water wearing away stone. I kept some things, a few photos, one particularly sweet Mother's Day card. The rest I donated to a charity shop. Someone else's child could play with those toys, wear those baby clothes, make new memories untainted by the ones I was trying to forget. Dr. Patel had recommended I see a therapist, someone to help me process everything. I'd resisted at first, Therapy felt like an admission that they'd broken something in me. But then I realized they had broken something in me. My ability to trust, my understanding of what love should look like, the belief that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything, including myself. So I started seeing Dr. Michaels once a week. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach I appreciated. You weren't buying his love, she told me in our third session. You were trying to heal your own grief through him. You lost Robert, and David was all you had left. So you held on the only way you knew how. By giving him everything. By trying to make yourself indispensable. If he needed you, he'd stay. If he stayed, you wouldn't be alone. I'd sat with that for a long time. But I'm alone anyway. Are you? Dr. Michaels tilted her head. You have Linda, Marcia, Tanya. You have Carol. You have Susan. You have a whole life you're rebuilding. You're not alone, Margaret. You're just alone from him. And maybe that's not the same thing. On what would have been Robert's 72nd birthday, I visited his grave with Susan. We'd started going together every few weeks. Her husband Tom's grave was only 3 rows over. I brought Robert's favourite flowers, sunflowers, ridiculously cheerful. Impossible to be sad around. I wish you could see me now, I told the headstone. I think you'd be proud, or maybe you'd be sad about David. Probably both. Susan waited a respectful distance away, giving me privacy. I'm okay, Robert, I said softly. I'm actually okay. I know that's strange to say after everything, but it's true. I'm stronger than I knew. I'm braver than I felt. And I've learned that the worst thing that can happen, losing your child's love, is survivable. It hurts like hell, but it's survivable. The wind rustled through the trees. Maybe it was Robert. Maybe it was just wind. Either way, it felt like permission to keep living. The settlement from the bank helped. After the trial, Patricia had contacted my bank with evidence of the financial exploitation. The bank's fraud department investigated and found that several of the large transfers had been processed under questionable circumstances, including 3 instances where Jennifer had apparently called the bank pretending to be me. The bank settled out of court for $35,000, a fraction of what I'd lost, but enough to rebuild my emergency fund and stop eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. It's not justice, Patricia had said when she'd handed me the check, but it's something. Something was more than I'd had before. 8 months after the trial, I got a letter. Not from David, from Jennifer's first ex-husband, Michael Martinez. Dear Mrs. Chen, my mother told me about the trial. I'm writing to apologize for my part in what Jennifer did to you. I was young and stupid, and I let her manipulate me into exploiting my mother's kindness. By the time I realized what was happening, the damage was done. After we divorced, I tried to make amends with my mother. It took years of therapy, genuine change, and consistent effort. We have a relationship now, though it will never be what it was. I broke something that can't be fully repaired. I'm telling you this because I know David. We met once years ago. He's not a bad person at his core. He's weak, and weakness in the presence of someone like Jennifer is dangerous. Maybe someday he'll wake up like I did. Maybe he won't. But either way, you deserved better. Your David deserved better than to become who he became. I'm sorry for the role I played in showing Jennifer how easy it was to exploit mothers-in-law. Michael Martinez. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. I didn't need to forgive Michael. His journey wasn't mine to absolve. But it helped, knowing that sometimes people did wake up. That sometimes the story didn't end with permanent estrangement. I didn't know if David would ever have his wake-up moment. Part of me hoped he would. Part of me had stopped hoping for anything from him at all. Both parts were okay. A year after the trial, I was at my watercolor class when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mum? My heart stopped. Stuttered. David's voice. I hadn't heard it in 12 months. Mum, I know I'm not supposed to call. I know about the restraining order. I needed you to know that Jennifer and I are divorced. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. You were right about everything, about her, about what we did, about all of it. I sat down, my hand shaking so hard the phone almost slipped. I'm in therapy, he continued, words tumbling out like he'd been rehearsing them. I've been in therapy for 6 months. I'm working on understanding how I became that person, how I let her twist everything, how I treated you like a bank instead of my mother. Silence. He was crying. I could hear it. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm so sorry. I wanted to say something, anything. But my throat had closed up completely. I should go. I'm violating the order, just calling you. But Mom, I love you. I know I didn't show it. I know I destroyed any proof of that. But it's true. I love you. And I'm sorry. And I understand if you never want to speak to me again. He hung up. I sat in that community center classroom, surrounded by amateur watercolors of flowers and landscapes, and cried. I called Patricia. He contacted you. Her voice was sharp. That's a violation. We can have him arrested. I don't want him arrested. Margaret. I don't want him arrested, Patricia. I need to know what I should do. Silence. Then gentler. What do you want to do? I don't know. Then do nothing. You don't have to decide today or tomorrow or ever. You don't owe him forgiveness just because he apologized. You don't owe him a relationship just because he's your son. You only owe yourself peace. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Then I wrote a letter. David, I received your call. I appreciate your apology. I believe that you believe you're sorry. And that's something. But I need you to understand what you're actually apologizing for. It's not just the money, though $247,000 represents the entirety of your father's life insurance and most of our retirement savings. It's not even the lies or the manipulation. It's that you made me feel worthless. You made me feel like the only thing valuable about me was what I could provide financially. You excluded me from your life except when you needed money. You dismissed my pain, gaslighted my reality, and tried to have me declared incompetent so you could take the last thing I had. You didn't just steal money. You stole years of my life that I spent believing I was purchasing your love, when what I was actually doing was teaching you that I had none. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. Maybe someday, maybe never. But if there's ever going to be a possibility, it can't be rushed. It can't be built on one phone call and one apology. It would take years of you proving, not with words, but with actions, that you see me as a human being worthy of respect, not as a resource to be managed. I'm glad you're in therapy. Keep going. Do the work. Become someone Robert would have been proud of. Not for me, for you, but right now, I need you to respect my boundary. Don't call again, unless I reach out first. If you truly love me, prove it by giving me space. Your mother, Margaret, I mailed it. Then I went to book club, and let my friends distract me with arguments about unreliable narrators and whether the ending of our current book was satisfying or cop-out. That was 8 months ago. David hasn't called again. But every few months I get a card, never asking for anything, just updates, brief ones. I'm still in therapy, learning a lot about myself. Hope you're well. I got a new job, something I actually care about. Thought you'd want to know. It's Dad's birthday. I went to his grave, told him I was trying to be better. I think he would have told me to stop talking and start doing. I don't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I keep the cards. Last week, Carol saw David drive by the house. He slowed down but didn't stop, just looked at the house, at the garden I'd been tending, at the new paint on the shutters, at the life I'd built without him. Then he drove away. Should I call the police? Carol asked, concerned. No, I said. He's allowed to drive on a public street. He didn't stop. He didn't try to contact me. Let him look. Let him see what I'd become without him. Let him see that I was fine. Let him see that his mother, the ATM with feelings, the mark, the resource, was actually a person who'd found a way to be happy. That was its own kind of justice. I'm Margaret Chen. I'm 69 years old now. I live on $1,847 a month. I have $8,000 in savings. I have a house that's mine. I have friends who love me not for what I can give them, but for who I am. I spent $247,000 over 8 years trying to buy my son's love. And I learned the hardest lesson of my life. You cannot purchase what someone doesn't have to give. But here's what else I learned. Your worth isn't measured by how much people take from you. It's measured by how much you have left to give to yourself. I learned that no is a complete sentence. I learned that family isn't always blood, and blood doesn't always mean family. I learned that it's never too late to save yourself, even when the person drowning you is the one you gave life to. I learned that grief has layers, grief for what was, grief for what never was, grief for what could have been, and that you can hold all those griefs at once and still choose joy. I learned that I'm stronger at 69 than I was at 29, 39, or 59, because strength isn't just about what you can carry, it's about knowing when to put the weight down. Sometimes people ask me if I regret having David. If I could go back, knowing how it would end, would I do it differently? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't traffic in hypotheticals anymore. I only deal in what is. What is, I had a son. I loved him completely. That love was real, even if it wasn't returned the way I needed. What is, I was exploited, hurt, betrayed. That pain was real too. What is, I survived. I'm here. I'm okay. And maybe that's enough. This morning I woke up and made coffee in Robert's favorite mug. The one that says, "World's Best Dad," that David bought him on a long ago Father's Day. I used to avoid that mug, couldn't stand the memories. Now I use it every morning. Because Robert was the world's best dad. And I was the world's best mom. And if our son couldn't see that, couldn't honor that, couldn't protect that, well, that's his loss, not ours. I'm sitting on my porch right now, watching the sunrise, drinking my coffee, and planning my day. Lunch with Linda, watercolor class. Maybe I'll finally prune those roses, maybe I won't. For the first time in 8 years, tomorrow is mine to decide. And I chose me. My name is Margaret Chen. I am 69 years old. And I have finally learned that you cannot buy love. But you can absolutely buy your freedom. Sometimes they cost the same amount. Sometimes the price is even higher than you thought you could pay. But you know what? I'd pay it again. Because I'm worth it. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, whether you're the Margaret giving everything away or the David taking without seeing, I want you to ask yourself one question. What are you actually buying with your choices? And is it worth the price? Leave a comment below telling me what you'd do in my situation. Would you have fought back sooner? Would you give David a second chance? I want to hear your stories, and if this resonated with you, please share it. Because somewhere out there is another Margaret who needs to know it's not too late, you're not alone, and you deserve so much better than to be someone's ATM with feelings. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup, and you certainly can't pour $247,000 from an empty bank account. I'm Margaret Chen, and this is my story of how I learned that the most expensive thing in life isn't money. It's the people who make you believe your love has a price tag.